Amanda, do you have anything to apologise to Marion Canavan for?
I don't think so. I mean, I think procedurally, what happened at full council is I waited for the person previously to speak. When they'd finished, any councillor can stand up and put a motion to move on with next business, which is what I did. So how Marion Canavan came to stand up and speak, I'm not sure. I think there's a kind of question mark procedurally over what happened there, possibly given that it was quite an emotive evening.
Did you get the impression that Labour were going to try and talk out your motion?
It felt like that. I think perhaps I was naive in expecting there to be group discipline around spending the right amount of time thanking outgoing councillors before moving on to what is actually important business. In fact, affects the borough to the tune of over £250,000. And also, it's time limited. We need to respond to government by 30th of April. Essentially, there was only one full council meeting in which all 49 members could stand up and be counted on behalf of their residents, and that was it.
Val Morris-Cook came up to you afterwards, gave you some advice. Was that good advice?
I think it was possibly not advice that I think I would take. At the end of the day, I won't apologise for having a job to do and doing it. I think that I did the right thing.
So, what was the motion?
My motion was actually to respond to the government's personal care at home bill. What we now know is what Thurrock's allocation is for that. We're still saying that we don't think that the bill is properly costed. We think it's going to be complicated for residents to understand. We know that it follows a Scottish system, and Scotland are considering actually scrapping that system, partly because they've got a £6 million funding gap, and partly because residents themselves find it extremely difficult to negotiate. And they also don't really understand what the outcome is for them, because although it says their care is free, actually it's only a particular element of their care which will be free, and another element which will be charged for. And quite clearly what they're saying is, please make it one or the other. If it's charged for, we'll accept that. If it's free, we accept it, but at least make it something we can understand when we're going through what is essentially a very difficult time.
It appears from the press box that you're the person in the council now and in the cabinet who's making all the tough moves and decisions. Is that a role, for example, with the voluntary sector? Is that a role you're comfortable with?
I'm very comfortable with it. I think, I take this very seriously. It is a job, and it's a job where sometimes you're going to be given difficult decisions to make, and I won't shy away from making them. What I'll do is make sure they're properly informed and justifiable decisions, and at times it won't make you popular, but it's a job and you need to do it, and I'm quite comfortable to do it as long as I can look the public in the eye and justify why I've made that decision, whether or not it's popular.
Do you think, interesting that last Friday you were at the Thurrock Business Awards, some people won, some people lost, but Women's Aid won Best Business in the Community. Do you think the voluntary sector need to start thinking more like a business all the time?
I think the voluntary sector itself is extremely complicated. It isn't, Women's Aid is a specific example of a group that provide a service on the front line, but also what you've got in the voluntary sector are umbrella and infrastructure organisations that are there to provide support and advice to others, and down to the small, purely volunteer-led groups that go out and deliver, say, the Sports Council and the Arts Council. So it's very difficult to say that it would be a one model fits all, but I think the biggest issue is to say, are they making sure that what they do is streamlined? Is it providing value for money? For some of those groups that won't apply because they raise the funds themselves, or they do a lot without any funding at all. But I think it's right to ask that question.
Last week at Cabinet there were 14 items, and you commented or made some form of comment or input on every single item. Do you feel you're being criticised for working hard?
I think it's one of those jobs where you're in the public eye, and I think if you sit back and you don't say very much, but you're a very good community councillor, so you wouldn't necessarily be able to input, for example, for council or something like that, then actually you wouldn't necessarily be high profile in those meetings. If you're a cabinet member, then clearly you if you've got questions and things, then you'll ask them and they'll be dealt with. So, but at the end of the day, as I say, it is a job, and I will do that job, whether I'm criticised for too many comments or too many questions. You know, I only have myself to answer to at the end of the day in terms of, do I take my jobs and my responsibility seriously?
Some people said that Gary Haig and Joy Redson could have just gone home for an early night.
I think that's unfair. I think it is. At the end of the day, I think if you've got a genuine question to ask or a genuine comment to make, then that's the right time to make it. It's you have a 2-hour meeting in which to get points clarified and decisions made. And sometimes there'll be meetings where people may be surprised to know that I don't speak at all.
Who's going to be leader of our council on May the 7th?
I think that will be Gary Haig.